This is the first real personal conversation that I'm having, and I look forward to it. Okay, let's do this.
And we go live.
So let's get started. Nitin, welcome to the Weekend Upgrade podcast. If for the benefit of the audience, you have to introduce yourself in 2 minutes. How would you introduce yourself?
Yeah, I would introduce myself as a student, as somebody who's on a journey of learning most fundamentally about myself. I think that is the most profound quest that we have in life, to understand self better and the world around us better. And I'm very interested in a lot of topics. I'm interested in technology. I'm interested in transformation, leadership, sports, spirituality, transforming India. So, a number of passions. So that's perhaps how I would describe myself, as a student, as a learner, who's inquisitive about a variety of topics.
All right. And what Nitin hasn't told you is that Nitin is the CEO of Incedo and the author of the book Winning in the Digital Age. And we are going to double click on this book in this entire podcast and ask him a lot of questions about what he just mentioned. So, Nitin, there are going to be a lot of bouncers. All right. So, Nitin, your book is titled Winning in a Digital Age. Is the digital age already here, and how is it different from the information age?
Yeah, the digital age is certainly here, Siddharth, though I might say that we are in very early stages of that, and I'll come back to it. It is, I would say it builds on the information age. Yeah, so there is the paradigm of the successive industrial revolutions, and many see that this as the fourth industrial revolution. I see it as bit of a complex frame. I like to use, I think the information age to digital age is a more natural way of describing the times we are in. And what is happening in the digital age is that there are a number of technology trends which got started in the information age, which have gathered tremendous pace and scale, and which are getting combined. So the way digital age is really different from the information age is the velocity, the scale, and the interaction effects. There are four fundamental forces which are driving it. First is the rise of devices. Number of devices is exploding. Second is the ginormous growth in data, the volume, velocity, variety of data growing and also becoming very cheap. Third is in computing power growing, and fourth is in bandwidth, which is making consumption very easy. So these are the four fundamental drivers, and they're all very interdependent. Yeah. So these are the key factors which are driving the digital age. And I want to come back to my comment around we are still in very early stages of the digital age. That I'm a sports fan, and I'll take a cricket analogy. That think of it as a 5-match test series, and we are on at lunch of the first day of the first test match. So that's how I look at it. So while there is already a lot of action that has happened in the before lunch, but that's where we are. There is a lot still to play out in this digital age.
Nitin, we have you have just explained the forces that brought this digital age to life, and what are the big changes that brought this digital age into the coming. My question to you is, there's still a lot of I would say a lack of clarity around the word digital transformation. It's like the new strategy word. Every person you ask him to how to define digital transformation, there is a new definition that comes up. So, what according to you is the best definition of digital transformation, if at all there is one?
Yeah, it's for good reason, Siddharth. Why there are many definitions, because it's a very big concept. and different individuals or leaders end up seeing it from a particular perspective. It's like this big elephant in the room, and the blind men, and they are seeing different parts of it, and that's what they end up describing. Yeah. So the way I think about digital transformation is the multiple changing that an enterprise needs to make to serve its customers in the best possible way using modern technologies or using digital technologies. Yeah. So the operative words for me is the customer. It is, see, there are many ways you can describe digital transformation, many ways you can anchor it, but the only the and it's very complex, but the only way you can truly anchor it in a very with a very solid foundation is the customer. So it is about what you're doing for the customer. And the second anchor for me is technology. This whole digital is happening, as we just discussed a while back, because of technology. So it is anchored in the technology change. Now, the third aspect of it and the complexity is that it is multiple set of changes which are happening at the same time. It is digital is about a change in your business model. It is change in your customer channels and the experience you're providing to the customer, not just from a sales perspective, but the entire cycle. Yeah. It is about changes, of course, in your technology. It is changes in your organization structure, the entire organization culture, and that perhaps is the biggest change and not something which is still not well understood. It is changes from a leadership and a talent perspective. So it's multiple levels of changes, and that's why you see the this wide variety of definitions. But all of this to me is part of digital transformation. But the way to anchor it, again, I think, is around the customer and then technology as the key change lever.
Okay. Now here comes the bouncer. If a client comes to you and asks you about, Nitin, I want to, undertake a digital transformation, journey at my organization, and that's the CDO or the CXO coming to you. What are the first three questions you ask to them?
See, the first question that really I ask is that, hey, what do you mean by this? Is to understand their frame. What does digital transformation mean to you? The question that you ask me is the question I ask them, because there's a different concept that different people have. And see, most times it's, when people say digital transformation, it is not that they're starting their digital journey. I think there will be very few in organizations out there who have done nothing on digital. Yeah.
Yeah.
Everybody has done something. So understanding their starting point is very, very important. Yeah. So what do they mean by digital transformation? Second is, what are the problems? What are the pain points that they are looking to solve? Yeah. So it is very important to translate or break it down from a very uber concept to a tangible set of problems, and ideally customer problems for the customer that they're looking to solve. And third is that question I ask is that, hey, what KPIs are you looking to impact? Is it revenue? Is it customer experience? Is it cost? Is it customer retention? What are the KPIs? And again, and I've said this earlier, digital is such a large and complex journey that it is so easy to lose your way. And unless and until you have some very clearly defined KPIs which become the North Star for you, you will more likely than not lose your way. So it is very important to anchor that. So those are my three questions. What does it mean to you? What are your pain points? And what are the KPIs that you're looking to impact?
That's a very good way to put it, Nitin. I also heard, one of your interviews where you mentioned that majority of the digital transformation initiatives fail. And I think if I remember correctly and my memory is serving me right, you said it's 70% or more than that, right? Could you please elaborate on What are the reasons that why these initiatives actually fail? Is it only because they fail to ask these three core questions, or is there some other important tangent attached to this?
Yeah, that number is right, and that it's not, to be fair, it's just not my number. It's many consulting firms, many academicians have looked at this topic, and I think that's the consensus number, and it's something very stark. If you look at the billions of dollars that are being spent on digital, and 70% of that failing or not achieving its full impact, is a pretty stark number. Now the question is that why is that the case? There are challenges both around strategy and execution. Yeah. The challenge around strategy that I see is that most companies, especially traditional companies, they end up transposing their business model from the physical world to the digital world, which I think is a grave mistake. Yeah. So it's still the paradigm, the same paradigm. So if you're a bank or you are a telecom provider, what you were doing in the physical world, you end up offering the same in the digital world, and so you miss out on what the power of digital. Yeah, you miss out on the power of digital. So there is the gap around strategy. Yeah, and inherent in that is this whole concern around cannibalization, because still 90% of the revenues or flow, or maybe 80% is coming from the physical channel. They are so concerned about not cannibalizing that they
Yeah,
don't
yeah,
allow the digital channel to flower in the right way. Yeah.
true.
There are many more challenges around strategy, but let me move on to execution. But because equally there are huge issues around execution. The biggest challenge that I see is that, see, digital by its very nature is a interdisciplinary problem, because digital is really about what you're trying to do for the client. Now the client doesn't care that it's a marketing problem, a technology problem, or a finance problem. Now again, most traditional organizations are not structured that way. They are structured functionally in silos, and so this inability to really work in this interdisciplinary fashion, and therefore keep on throwing things over the wall, is ends up being a big issue. The second big issue is seeing this as a technology program. And and see, technology is a very important aspect of digital transformation, but it is simply one aspect. If you upgrade the technology and your underlying business processes haven't changed, you are not going to have the impact. Yeah. and
Yeah.
and, it, and that is another key issue that happens. So I can go on, but there are issues around strategy and their inability to really change the business model or adapt to a digital first business model. And there are many issues around execution. The primary among them is this whole inability to break out of the functional silos and being stuck into these being defined as technology only programs.
Great point, Nitin. I would like to double click on one of the important points you made, that the reason why it becomes little challenging for these organizations is that 80% of their revenues are still coming from the legacy models that they have. Now, as as the CEO who interacts daily with the board of directors of these organizations, do you often get this pushback that, Nitin, it's not broken, it's still working, right? How do you go about convincing them on such things that, listen, it might be working now, but it may not be the case in future? What are the persuasion skills or the things that you bring to life when you are having those discussions? I think that would be great to know.
See, I would say that over the last couple of years, Siddharth, the level of awareness is reasonably high. Yeah, I wouldn't say that in majority of industries, the penny has dropped. So people know that
Yeah.
this is happening, and our business is getting disrupted by a new set of competitors, the competitors that we never imagined. So, and this is a board level topic. So I would say majority the pennies dropped. There are some industries which are further down on the digital adoption curve, maybe very industrial, manufacturing oriented industries where maybe this is still a question that, hey, digital is not for us. Yeah, maybe there are a few industries. So now coming to the next level of there may be an awareness at the macro level that yes, we need to raise our game on digital, but there may be a resistance at a specific level that, oh, we have this great website, we have this great app, and our digital customers have increased by 100% last year. So what's the problem? We are doing great. But the point is your digital customers have increased by 100%, but that as a share of your total customers may still be single digit, and that may still be
Yeah.
much lower than what your peers are doing. So a very effective way which I have seen and which we use at Incedo all the time is benchmarking, to bring simple benchmarks which compare with peers in the industry and sometimes across industries, to bring a reality check on
Yeah.
what. See, it's still very interesting that many great companies still end up having a very internal frame. They still look at
Hmm.
numbers on a year on year basis, and you see a growth and you feel
Yeah.
very good. But the moment you go beyond the frame and you bring data from the market, it can be very illuminating, though not always easy to get across. But yeah, I am
Yeah.
a big fan of benchmarking.
Yeah. I think one fallacy that even I have noticed with my clients is that they fail to notice the outlier in the market and bring the best practices internally. They are just thinking about the other incumbents, and then they fail to see that okay, there is an outlier who might not be doing it at scale, but they are disrupting the model in a very irreversible way, and that is where the best lessons for the incumbents can come. My next question to you, Nitin, is that Nitin, you have written this 500 pager book, Winning in the Digital Age, and I have read it, and I truly enjoyed reading it. Uh, I would like to, bring what you have shared in that book to the present, economic circumstances the world is going through. We are just passing, or moving out of the pandemic stage. Now, digital as it is was a very complex subject, as you have highlighted. Now, COVID has added fuel to that complexity. What are your views on the impact of COVID on, the digital acceleration or transformation, and how should the CDOs and CIOs respond to this, challenge that was not anticipated?
Yeah, see, COVID is just, look, just a most unusual event, that we as mankind have gone through. So certainly in our generation, it's just simply the most unique event. Now, the interesting thing about COVID is that it is not all bad. It is,
Yeah.
I think nature gives us signals, and nature through COVID has given us many signals, and digital adoption is just simply one of them. So the whole sheer fact that there was work from home, all travel was constrained, just forced an adoption of remote working, which one could have never imagined. And what that has meant is that digital adoption across industries has just skyrocketed. So number of industries that I'm intimately familiar with, where my firm Incedo does a lot of work: telecom, financial services, life sciences, wealth management. The digital penetration has zoomed. So what perhaps would have happened over 3 to 5 years has happened last year. Has happened
Yeah.
last year. And that's in industries like financial services and telecom, which were already perhaps on the digital curve. Now, industry like life sciences, especially in the pharmaceutical side, which you may say was a laggard from a digital perspective, they have certainly been pushed into it. Yeah, that
Yeah.
they have to face it. Now the key question which CIOs and CDOs are asking at this point is really around scale, is around scaling up. So I think there were many things which were in the realm of proof of concept. So, for example, customer experience and personalization of customer experience and using AI as a way of driving that. That perhaps 12 months back was a very interesting POC that a company
Yeah.
would be interested in. But in 12 months, that whole language has changed from POC to POS. It has become proof of scale. Yeah. So
Yeah.
that's the big shift that has happened. And therefore, on some of the underlying core technologies like cloud, there is just a massive shift. If there was any questions that were there, somehow were still there, I think those questions have become somewhat irrelevant because it's now,
Yeah.
water find its own course, and it's very clear. Hey, digital is happening. It's kind of happening at a scale lot more than what we had anticipated, and we now have to scale up to make this happen.
Yeah. I'm going to carry that with me, POC to POS. I think that's a good analogy. I'll use it with some of my clients. Okay, Nitin, time for a bouncer. You expressed that your love for India is very critical, and you believe in building India. So this question is even going to be difficult for me as well. तो नितिन, अगले 1 से 2 मिनट आप हिंदी में हमारे श्रोतागणों के लिए अगर विनिंग इन द डिजिटल एज पुस्तक के बारे में कुछ बताना चाहेंगे तो आप हिंदी में क्या बताएं?
डिजिटल मैं पूरा प्रयत्न करूंगा. डिजिटल
जी.
हमारी इस युग का एक बहुत ही महत्वपूर्ण एक बहुत ही महत्वपूर्ण एक चेंज है जो हो रहा है. शायद इस युग का सबसे महत्वपूर्ण ये एक चेंज है. पर ये परिवर्तन है, परंतु ये सरल नहीं है. इसमें इस परिवर्तन में कई मुद्दे हैं और इसके कारण ये बहुत ही जटिल हो जाता है, ये बहुत ही कठिन हो जाता है. एंड इसी कारण से ये जो डिजिटल है, ये जो डिजिटल का एक पूरा प्रभाव है वो पूरा हो नहीं पाता है. सो ये पुस्तक के में मैंने इस पूरे परिवर्तन को सरल बनाने का एक प्रयत्न करा है. मेरा मानना है कि कुछ भी कठिन काम आपको करना है तो उस कठिन काम को पहले आपको सरल बनाने की आवश्यकता होती है. और ये मुख्य मेरा उद्देश्य है इस किताब से कि इस बहुत ही कठिन विषय को हम सरल बनाएं, उसको एक छोटे छोटे भागों में एक बांटें जिससे वो मुद्दे को हम हल कर पाए. सो वो एक समस्या से आगे बढ़ के एक वो समाधान की तरफ हम बढ़ पाए.
अति उत्तम नितिन. हम सारे लोग इस सत्य से अनभिज्ञ थे कि आपका हिंदी के ऊपर भी अच्छा पकड़ है. पर बहुत अच्छा लगा जान के नितिन. नाउ सो बैक टू आवर पॉइंट एंड आई विल जस्ट कीप थ्रोइंग इन दीज बाउंसर्स टू चेंज द एनर्जी एंड टू ब्रिंग अप द लेवल अप. And I'm enjoying it so far, Nitin, and I hope it's the same for you. Now, in your book, you have highlighted the 7 building blocks of digital transformation. So my point is, I will be breaking these down like question wise, as we discuss. What really struck me is that the first pillar, of the first block of digital transformation in your book talks about the new rules of business, Nitin. So what are the new rules of business, and are they applicable to both the B2B and the B2C businesses? Big, mega billion incumbents and the small scale startups, unicorns and unicorns. What are your views on that, on the new rules of business?
Yeah, I think the new rules that I've articulated, I think they're relevant for across both B2C, B2B incumbents, new players. I would like to just spend maybe a minute on why the new rules. And your starting
Yeah.
question was why is that 70% failure rate for digital transformation? And that's something which has really struck with me, because a lot of my experience initially at McKinsey, then at Fidelity, where I was quite involved in driving digital transformation for one of the really mega, very successful companies in the world, and then going to Flipkart, being at the really the frontier of digital chaos, and then at Incedo, where I've been very fortunate to serve some of the largest companies in the world. It just really struck me that across the patch, companies are struggling, and the question is, why are they struggling? They are struggling because they are solving problems at the surface level. Yeah. And to really solve problems, you have to keep on going down. Why is this happening? Why is this happening? You have So that cause and effect, you have to keep on asking yourself. And when I've done that, what was very clear to me was that, hey, this is a very different world. This is a very different world. The customer is very different. There is this whole thing about data, which is just completely different. The whole volume, velocity, variety, we have mentioned it earlier. The speed is very different. The role of technology is very different. So there are many factors which are very fundamentally different. Now, if the key drivers of business are so different, the rules that we have had so far will not work. If the game has changed, you can't keep on playing by the same rules and expect like a winning outcome. No. So there is a fundamental mismatch, and that's why I spent a lot of time thinking about these rules, and I think my time at Flipkart was really helpful, because it was such a contrast between the set of experiences I'd had at McKinsey and Fidelity, and then being at a digital native, and just a very different model that I saw. So these so yeah, this world is different. The fundamentals are different, and therefore you need different rules. And just to talk about some of the things, for example, strategy. Historically, the way we have thought about strategy is that, you do corporate, you do a market outlook, you do a corporate strategy, you do a business unit strategy, you break it down into marketing strategy, distribution strategy, manufacturing strategy, you then do like an annual plan, and so on and so forth. Yeah. So there is a flow from strategy to execution. But what happens is, this VUCA world we are in, very volatile, uncertain, complex, ambiguous, the best laid strategic plans don't survive contact with with reality. It's like Muhammad Ali's famous quotation that everybody has a plan till they get punched in the face.
Will they get a start? Yeah.
In the VUCA world, you get punched in the face all the time. So this strategy thing can actually be quite, and when I was at Fidelity and I was doing strategy for the international business, it really struck me. We were going through agile training, and the I still remember the instructor said that the half-life of any strategy is now 6 months, that the assumptions on which you made the strategy, they will change in 6 months. And it really struck me that, hey, I'm the strategy guy, and perhaps what I'm doing is completely wrong. And then then it kind of came for me that, hey, it is about execution, and execution is king in this VUCA world, in this digital age, and therefore the relationship between strategy and execution is very different. It's not a linear relationship. It is not strategy to execution. You do need to have a kind of a broad purpose and a direction of travel. Based on that, there are a number of initiatives you execute on. Some work, some don't work, and you connect the dots from that, and you connect the dots, and that's your strategy. And that's what works, you do more of. What doesn't work, you do less of. Yeah. So it's a very iterative and circular relationship between strategy to execution, very different from the traditional paradigm. Yeah, I can go on and on, but I'll stop here. So look, fundamentals are different, and therefore you need new rules, and these rules are get to the foundations of management science. Yeah, and I think they are applicable across different type of companies.
Then one thing which I really liked about your book is that you make a mention of industry maturity curves, as one of the building blocks. And I have been so passionately following the digital maturity models. I would like you to talk about the industry maturity curves, and then perhaps I will ask you one leading question related to your work that you have done in financial services. That will be the bouncer here. But if you would like to talk about industry maturity curves, then why should the CXO study them? Could you talk about that in 2 minutes?
See, the core concept of industry maturity curve is that there are some similar set of changes that are happening across industries. There are 5 or 6 set of forces which are common. They are inherent to the digital age. Yeah, different industries are at a different level of maturity in terms of how those forces are playing out. Now, if you understand those forces and you understand what has happened in industries which are somewhat ahead of you, that gives you some insight and foresight in terms of how your changes in your industry might play out. Yeah. So now, what are some of these fundamental forces which are common across industries? Number one, the expectation of customers for experience is rising dramatically. So, whatever industry you're in, experience expectation is driven by Amazon, Netflix. Yeah, and that then drives a number of things. Number two, industry structures and value chains are getting disintermediated. Yeah, so you may have different structures. You talked about B2B, B2C. There are B2B to C or B2B to B2C. There are many structures which are there, but across industries, the B2C model is becoming more dominant. Yeah. So whatever may be the industry, you are becoming a B2C business eventually. Yeah, that's a very fundamental shift that is happening. The the trend number three, the value chains are getting blurred. Yeah, the traditional definition of value chains are getting blurred. A very good example, telecom industry, do a lot of work in telecom, and media have got completely intermeshed. Completely intermeshed. You can't segregate telecom and media. And that's why you see that the largest companies in the world, telecom companies in the world, AT&T and Verizon, have ended up buying mega media houses. Yeah, because those boundaries have blurred. New competition. Yeah, and you said financial services. You look at banks. If you are Citibank, perhaps your main fear is not JP Morgan or Wells Fargo. It is perhaps the fintechs, or maybe even not the fintechs. Now it is Google and Amazon. Yeah, product proliferation. There are too many products, and because of that, the product life cycles are getting crunched. What was maybe 5 years is becoming 2 to 3 years. And finally, pricing transparency. That because of pricing transparency that digital brings, there is a downward pressure on prices in all industries. So these are 5 or 6 fundamental trends which are, whatever industry you're in, you need to understand, and you need to see that it is likely to progress in a certain way. And if you see the one ahead of you, or maybe somebody who's 2 steps ahead of you, it will give you maybe a bit of a head start.
Yeah. Which brings me to the next question. You just made a mention of fintech, Nitin. What are your views on digital-only banks threat to the big banks? Like, again, they are way past the proof of concept stage. Some of them are like now the decacorns. Do you think that the big banks should be really worried about the digital-only banks as more and more licenses are getting granted and open banking regulations are coming up? So, what are your thoughts on that?
I think there are two parts to this, Siddharth. So there is undeniable that digital bank is a reality. Yeah, that's a reality. But it does not mean that it is end game for the large banks. every large bank that I know, and I'm fortunate to work with a number of them, they are very aware of it, and I think in each one of them there is a initiative underway which is building the digital bank. Yeah. So look, the traditional banks do have a set of advantages. See, in financial services, the key thing is about trust. Yeah, is about trust, and that's a trust. The switching behavior is very different from what you see, let's say, in retail. Yeah, where in retail the availability and pricing drives a lot of switching behavior, whereas in financial assets, because of the trust factor, that is much lower, and banks do have the benefit of that, and the physical network further provides a certain strength to it. Yeah. So now the thing is that if the big banks are able to build on that and adapt fast enough to the digital world, which the customer is also expecting in terms of experience and service, I think they have a very I think it will be I think they will really be able to ride the wave. But let's also be clear, if you're only riding on your past loyalty, customer loyalty, and you do not adapt quickly enough, today the banks are also being protected by regulation. Yeah, and that is one of the reasons why fintechs haven't been able to grow as much as probably they should have. But I think that will change over a period of time. Yeah. So just loyalty and regulation will not be enough. But I'm actually quite hopeful about the future of the big banks, because what I see is that they are quite aware. They're quite aware of the set of challenges that are out there.
Perfect. Nitin, I'll also want to cover some of the other questions which are, more related to you as well. Nitin, if I were to ask you that, where do you see yourself 10 years from now? Right? What is the next big game for you personally? And you can add the professional angle as well, but would just love to know that how are you thinking about the future?
See, I don't, for me, always professional and personal, I don't see them in different boxes at all. For me, they go very closely together. And, the one thing about me, good or bad, is I'm very authentic about what I do and my set of choices. So yeah, the professional and personal, these are not separate choices for me. There are two or three big themes that I'm very passionate about. So one theme that I'm very passionate about is this intersection of business and technology. That the role of technology over time has been changing from being a support function to actually driving the business, and that's something I feel extremely. I think that's an amazing opportunity, and that in a sense is the foundation of this digital age. Yeah. So and I want to really play this out. I want to bring, I think I know something valuable here, and I want to bring that to the world, and I want to bring that, and I want to do that through my firm Incedo, and to serve great companies, help them win in this digital age. So that's something I feel very passionate about. Equally, I want to bring that to the world at large, and therefore this book, Winning in the Digital Age, and perhaps more around that. Yeah, so that's something, this whole business technology intersection is something I feel extremely passionate about. The second topic that I feel very passionate about, which may seem like different, but I think is interconnected in my mind, is about spirituality, and this whole thing about spirituality and leadership, the balance of spirituality and materialism, and how I have this very strong conviction, very strong belief that spirituality is one of the very essential foundations for succeeding in the digital age in this 21st century. So that's something I've been exploring for the last, I would say, 25, 30 years. and I'm still a very, very early student in that. But every day, I think I learn a little bit, and there are many things I'm trying to do even more formally around that, and that's something I want to continue learning, and hopefully at a point of time, I feel confident enough about it that I've learned enough that I can start maybe writing about it and doing things more formally about it. And the third thing which really inspires me is about youth in India. That I just, I always get so inspired that, hey, 850 million people below the age of 35, what an amazing opportunity. And I've been very fortunate in my career to generally work with young people, including Siddharth, you, when you were younger.
Thank you. We go back 15 years, by the way. I was just
So,
thinking, about the time when we actually met. But yeah, go on, listen, please.
yeah, so yeah, and that I just think this is such an amazing. It's so energizing. What the confidence and the sense of audacity and drive that the youth have, and I want to do more there. And I've been experimenting, so I'm involved with this new university which is coming up, Laksha. So it's something very, very interesting. And that's just one thing, but again, this is a theme that I want to explore a lot more. So I think these are three themes: this business and technology intersection, spirituality, and how do you bring it out in a very practical way as a way of leading a more fulfilling and anchored life in this crazy world we are in. And how do you spark the creativity and the enormous potential of the youth in India? I think these are three passions that I want to stay with for many years to come.
And then I have you talked about spirituality. So now time for a quiz question. The quiz question is, according to the Vedas in India or the Upanishads, scriptures that were written in the ancient Indian time span, what are the four Mahavakyas?
Tattvam asi, thou, yeah, Tattvam asi, aham brahmasmi. Um, yeah, what else? Um, if you understand these two, you understand everything. So
You are pretty close, pretty close.
the only you really need to know is Tattvamasi. But yeah, just help me with the other two, Siddharth.
Yeah, I think the first one that was Jnanam Brahma, and so which means that Brahma is pure consciousness, and the other one which was related to was that you already made a point of Tattvamasi. I am Atma Brahma. So I think three of them carry the word Brahma, and
Yeah,
which is
Tattvamasi is really the mool, or the root, and then
you're right.
Aham Brahmasmi is a way of saying that, and then there are other Mahavakyas are also interplay of the same concept.
Okay, Nitin. Now time for one more question, and then we again pivot back to the digital topic. You have more than 25 years of work experience. Now imagine that right now where you are sitting across the table is 25-year-old Nitin. And since you have seen how the future has panned out, the next 25 years have panned out for him. And you just have like three lines you can write on a piece of paper and pass it on to him. The 25-year-old Nitin, what would be those three lines or three messages that you want to give?
You have managed to tell audience my age, that 25
Oh
years
my
back
God.
when I was 25. So yeah, I'm going to turn 50 in a couple of months. What are three things? See, first I must say that I feel pretty good about the journey I've had, and I feel very, very fortunate and very blessed that I think it was serendipity, and it was that when I look back at my life, I feel a very high sense of alignment. That, hey, what has played out in the right way and well. So I'm very, very fortunate and thankful for that. But what is advice that I would give to my 25-year-old self? First thing the three things I would say first is, have a range of experiences, explore the world. Number two, take more risks, do more crazy things. And third is really value and treasure your relationships. End of the day, it is all about relationships. It is all about that. And this is the time when you really build your relationships and just invest, realize the value of it, invest more in that. These are the three things I will tell my
Wow, that's
25
very
year
profound, Nitin. Coming back to the digital topic, the third block in your book is the digital technologies, and we are living in the world where ABCD are emerging as the general purpose technologies. So, what are your views on how can companies develop a laser sharp focus about how to choose a particular technology that's going to impact their future? Because you can't be like scattered in your approach and go after all of these. What are your thoughts on the digital technologies?
See, see. I think one of the challenges, Siddharth, is that a lot of the debate around digital has been framed, by technology providers trying to sell a new technology. Yeah. Now I have to be, I'm also, I run a technology company, so I have to be, I'm probably, shooting myself, but this is a reality. I see that there is a lot of, myth building, or there is a lot of FOMO being created, fear of missing out, that here is the new technology, or here is this magic thing, which you can't miss out on. It will not, so look, that is one of the problems of digital, and the way technology is really secondary. It is essential, but it is secondary to what you're trying to do for the customer. So if you go back to the whole definition of digital transformation, which was your first question, see, to me the starting point is, hey, who's your customer? What is the customer pain point? What are you trying to do for them? And that should really drive your thinking around your digital stack. Now, as far as the digital stack goes, it's now like, there are some very clear elements to it. There is a element around your experience or the customer interaction. There is a layer around data science, which drives the personalization. There is the entire data kind of, which is the entire engine for the stack. There is the whole operations layer, and then there are the fundamental building blocks, cloud, blockchain, yeah, and then AI, which is kind of powering across the whole stack. So look, over the last, I would say, 18-24 months, the elements of a digital stack have become pretty clear, yeah, and there are now the point I would make is that instead of worrying too much about just individual aspects, what is very, very critical is that all of these different layers need to connect well with each other. Let us say that you're trying to build a great experience layer, but if you do not have the data to power that or enable it, it will not happen. It will not happen. Yeah. So we have to realize that it's like this orchestra. Yeah. The individual artists in the orchestra have to be competent, but unless they are in sync with each other, this orchestra will not work. Yeah. And that is really my analogy for the digital stack. Yeah. Think of it as an orchestra, not just as individual players.
Amazing, Nathan. Which brings me to my next question related to the global delivery model. Could you define it for the audience? It's one of the important aspects of the building blocks that you have highlighted. And also the fact that we live in a VUCA world wherein there is a lot of uncertainty around the geopolitical interests, nationalism, trade wars, like one tweet by one of the presidents or the premier can shake up the entire world and the supply chains, right? Is a truly global delivery model really possible, and what are your thoughts on it?
My yes, there are contra forces, Siddharth. There are contra forces, and that's again, one of the very interesting aspects of this digital age. You may have noticed that I keep on using digital age and VUCA world interchangeably because I see VUCA, volatile, uncertain, complex, ambiguous, as a great way of describing this digital age. Yeah. And one of the essential features of this VUCA world, Siddharth, is that there are contradictions. Yeah, there are contradictions all over the patch. Yeah, and this whole global and local and protectionism is one such contradiction where both things are true. Now, digital by its very nature is global. It's not defined by physical boundaries. If you put up a digital property, it's available to anybody, anywhere in the world. Yeah. So any digital business by definition is global, and both the demand side has to be global, but equally my submission is that the whole delivery model has to be global. Why is that? Now, in digital age, given the forces that we talked about earlier, every enterprise has this contradictory set of forces. On one hand, there is a pressure to innovate. Yeah, because product cycles are shorter, you need to constantly innovate. And on the other side, there is a pressure on prices and therefore a pressure on costs. So you have to do both. You have to invest in innovation and you have to cut costs. Yeah.
Yeah.
So now to do this at the same time, the answer then ends up being global, cost efficient locations like India or Eastern Europe or Latin America. You can't go, it's a simple maths. How will you do it? Because you need to cut costs. At the same time, you need a velocity in terms of innovation. That innovation is technology-led innovation, which gets down to data, AI, cloud, and all of that. Where are you going to get the skills? Yeah, so you and get both of these together. The only way you can get this is, in locations like India and Eastern Europe, where you have abundance of young talent and which is still at very different price points. So that is why this global delivery is so essential. It's not just a cost play. It's a cost plus innovation double header. It's a double header. And that's why you can't do it without global delivery. Now, the politics is, of course, it's there. But my view is that it's the noise, not the signal. Is the noise, not the signal. To me, the signal is what we just discussed, which is the fundamentals of the digital world, and it's fundamentally global in nature, and you have this double header, and therefore you need global delivery. Politics will keep on happening. Sometimes it will rear its head, but I see it. You always need to be able to segregate signal and noise. To me, it's the noise, not the signal.
Yeah, good point, Nitin. And then the next question is something which is, I know is very close to your heart. In fact, that was the starting point of how we got to know each other. It's about organizational transformation and, also talking about the culture aspect of it, which you truly are a champion. Which brings me to the next question. Is organizational and cultural transformation possible at scale?
Yeah, it's look, I'm still in the process of discovering that, understanding that. It is the holy grail. It is the holy grail of digital transformation. You have these 7 building blocks, and if I use the word block in a different sense, as in blocking, yeah. So of the seven blocks, organization transformation or organization change is today the block. Yeah, is the block. Yeah. The issue today in digital transformation is not about technology. Yeah. Most organizations have figured out technology to an extent, some more, some less. But really, if you look at the large traditional companies, what they're really struggling with is organization change. So the fact that organizations need to transform themselves in many fundamental ways is a given that I'm very clear about. Yeah. How you do that is a more complex puzzle. Yeah. Now let me talk a bit about what are some of the changes that are required. Yeah. Now the essential one of the essential requirements to win in the digital age is speed. Now today the way organizations are designed, the fundamental. So let me ask you a question. You've been asking me all these bouncers, so let me ask you a question that what do you
Yeah.
think is the fundamental, the root design principle behind organization, the way organization structures and processes are designed? What is the root? What is a key
So,
design principle?
I mean, I may be totally off the charts here, but I think the key reason or the intent is to keep things in order, and that order again becomes the limitation of that system or the structure itself. So while the intent was good to bring something or to do something to establish something, but that itself stops the flow, or the building block becomes the blocking, as
Very
you
good.
pointed it
Very,
out.
very good. Very good. I'll yes, I'll just refine maybe what you said. The core is really about not making mistakes. That's really the heart of it. The
Yeah.
core is not making mistakes. It's about risk management. Yeah. Why else? That if you have a process, you have the maker checker, and then on top, you have somebody working, and you have a supervisor and a supervisor and a supervisor. It is to make sure that things don't go wrong. It is essentially, it is this whole great sense of risk. Yeah. And that's one of the very fundamental thing, and that is what slows down things, because you have multiple steps in the process, you have multiple levels in an organization, and that's just very, very fundamental change that needs to happen, a very different attitude to risk, where you can design simpler, flatter organizations, straight through processes. Yeah. Now this is a very fundamental change, Siddharth. It is a change of mindsets, which have been embedded over like 100 years or more.
Yeah.
Yeah. The second thing, which is very fundamental, we talked about in some of our earlier conversation, is about, hey, the digital problems are interdisciplinary problems. They are fundamentally customer problems. Yeah. Customer doesn't care how you're organized. So how do you now break up your organization so that you're organized around the customer problem? Now, this is, if you really look at the difference between digital natives like Google and Amazon and the more traditional enterprises, as per my assessment, this is the main differentiator. Because
Yeah.
digital natives, they had a clean sheet of paper, so the way they have organized themselves is what they call the product organization. The product organization, and the product is the customer problem. And whether, whatever is the customer problem, you have marketing, data science, engineering, blah blah blah, all come together. Now for traditional organizations, breaking that and going into that mold is a very big thing. You're talking about organizations which have got tens of thousands of people, in many cases hundreds of thousands of people. Yeah.
Yeah.
So these are just two of, I can talk about many fundamental things that need to change from an organization perspective, but these are two very material ones. I may add another one, which is, how do you make the organization more human? How do you make the organization more connected? In a digital world, again, this is one of those paradoxes. In a digital world, which is driven by data, which is driven by machines, my view is that the need to connect at a human level is even higher. And how do you do that? So these are, yeah. So maybe I'll pause there. That, look, this is the holy grail. That there is and especially for the large enterprises, this is going to be, to my mind, we talked about digital is, lunch on day one of first test match and all of that. Whether they go and win the test match series, I think will hinge on this piece, how well they are able
Yeah.
to transform their organization.
Very good point, Nitin. So the next question is about entrepreneurial leader, and I think you have touched upon it. You have touched upon the organizational transformation, aspect. And I think, if I'm not wrong in assuming, the entrepreneurial leader has to play a big role in ensuring that block fits in right into the picture. So, who is an entrepreneurial leader? And my question related to that is there a space for too many alpha males or alpha female leaders in an organization, or is it like there can only be limited set of entrepreneurial leaders in an organization?
See, entrepreneur leader does not necessarily equal alpha male, alpha female. What does being an entrepreneur leader mean? Yeah, to me, an entrepreneur leader is somebody who's not working off a script or instructions. Somebody who is proactive, somebody who's take charge, somebody who's going to see opportunities, is able to to sniff and find the opportunities and goes after them. Yeah,
Yeah.
those are the characteristics of an entrepreneur leader. I would submit that that is the prototype for what we have called manager historically. Yeah, and I think that
Yeah.
word is not even relevant in the digital age. Everybody has to be an entrepreneur leader. Yeah, you have to see, because in this digital age, it's VUCA, is constantly changing. So there is no given script. You have to create your own script. Yeah, so you have to be proactive. You have to take ownership. Without it cannot happen. Yeah, so this to me is a given. Yeah. Now, if by alpha male or female you mean people who are more assertive, who communicate more strongly, who put their hand up first, yes, there is you need that. You need that. But what is very essential in this digital age, in this VUCA world, Siddharth, and it's a very important concept I'm going to share. Nobody can do it alone. Okay, it's too complex. Okay, it's too complex. Nobody can do it alone, at an individual level, at a team level, at an organization level. Yeah, so I can't do it alone. And Siddharth, even you are a superman, but even you can't do it alone. Okay, on whatever you are trying to
Yeah.
do. Yeah, you need the team. You need the team, and the team needs to have different set of skills. Yeah. So one of the things I talk about in my book is the value of diversity. It's not just like a nice statement. Diversity is so critical in this digital world, because there is so much complexity. It's very multidimensional. You need to be able to look at problem situations from multiple lenses. And that's why diversity is so critical. Yeah. Now, if you not take it to an organization level, equally no one organization can do it alone. And every organization is becoming like an open organization. You're constantly trying to figure out collaboration, partnerships, M&A. Nobody can do it alone. Yeah.
No, absolutely. In fact, Nathan, that's what, in fact, my definition of alpha male or female was exactly linked to what, it was not the alpha of the pack, but it was more about the alpha of the organization. Which brings me to just one, 10-second question. Like, have you seen too many entrepreneurial leaders being good at collaboration as well? Because this is something I genuinely wanted to ask. I've seen that they
I
are
think it's a
great
big
at
challenge.
doing this, but
I think,
collaboration is a challenge.
yeah, I think it can be a challenge. Your quote unquote success itself can become a big challenge. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because that brings some mental models that I know it, or I know it best. Yeah. And that can become a challenge in terms of collaboration. There is also this thing about speed. You want to move with speed, you want to be very decisive, and that can work against collaboration. So again, it is one of those paradoxes. One of the very key things of this digital age is this duality, that how do you manage this, how do you master this duality? So yes, your success as an entrepreneur leader can be a challenge in terms of collaboration. Absolutely.
And then now, I think that that's a great explanation around the topics of organizational transformation and entrepreneurial leadership. I would like to come to the seventh block of, digital winning in the digital age, which is about the next gen talent. And here I have two questions. One question is, how do you define next gen talent? And second is that a lot of people have been caught in the digital age in the middle of their career, right? There are people who are just starting their career at 25-year-old Nitin or a 25-year-old Sid, but at the same time, there are people who are 35, 40 years of age and caught in the middle of this big change that has been accelerated by COVID as well. Now, how do you, suggest that they become or evolve as the next gen talent too? What are your thoughts on running this organization where I'm sure you are constantly involved in upskilling and the reskilling of the people? But what are your thoughts on these two questions? What is next gen talent? And second is, what advice do you have for somebody who's caught in the middle of the wave?
Yes, see, next gen talent to me is not necessarily or only young talent.
Okay.
Yeah, next gen talent to me is talent, which demonstrate the set of attributes and competencies required to succeed in the digital age. Yeah, and what are those attributes? It is what we already talked about: the entrepreneurial leadership, risk taking, audacity. I would even go further and say being a maverick. Yeah, so somebody I'm very inspired by, Steve Jobs, and this, being a maverick. Yeah, great problem solving. Yeah, and we can maybe talk more about it subsequently. I think, given the complexity in the digital age, it is not about specific knowledge or expertise. It is your ability to grasp any situation and then work through that. So your core problem solving skills are neglected. Yeah, so these are some of the fundamental skills required to succeed in the digital age, and that is what I mean by next gen talent, which demonstrate this. Now, if you're already mid career, if you're already, quote unquote successful, it does bring a challenge, as we talked earlier, because success is like this burden. Yeah, because you with that there is a conditioning that happens. There are some mental models that get built. Now you're starting off in your career, you don't have that layering, so in a sense it's easier for you to adapt. Yeah, so I do think young professionals have a head start in the digital age, and they should go for it. They should go for it and seize this carpe diem, seize the moment. Yeah, for the young professionals. But for mid tenure professionals, it's not game over by any stretch of imagination. That's why I keep on saying we're in early stages of the digital age. It's still day one lunch of the test series. Okay, so there is a long way to go. Now, the greatest skill, the greatest thing that mid career professionals need is learnability. How do you is the learning orientation, is to drop this thing that, oh, I know a lot. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think it also gets down to this thing about humility, that not taking yourself too seriously, recognizing that it's a vast world. We are a speck in that ocean, and there is so much to discover. Yeah, and it's infinite. What you need to learn, and build that curiosity, build the curiosity to learn, and to build the skill of deliberate learning. It's not just learning. Learning has to be a deliberate process where you focus on a topic. You are able to get to the real key points of in that subject, and you master them. And I think a great example of that is Elon Musk. Isn't it just unbelievable that, from payments to electric cars to space exploration, he just or even Jeff Bezos for that matter, it's just unbelievable that how they're able to take completely disparate topics and then master that. It's deliberate learning. It's not general knowledge. It's not general knowledge. It is a very deliberate and focused and deep learning process. That I think curiosity and humility are the key mindsets, but deliberate learning I think is the most important skill. That is what I would ask mid-career professionals, or for that matter, every professional to really focus on.
No, absolutely. And I think, Nitin, your book, having read that, it's a great start for somebody who should learn to learn. And time for the next bouncer, Nitin. If you have to talk about your book for 2 minutes in Punjabi, Winning in the Digital Age, how would you go about explaining it? I'm curious to, hear what you have to say. मैं भी क्वेश्चन पंजाबी च पुट करदा है नितिन जे तुसी साडे दर्शਕਾਂ वास्ते अपनी बुक विनिंग इन द डिजिटल एज ਨੂੰ ਪੰਜਾਬੀ ਚ ਸਮਝਾਉਣ ਦੀ ਕੋਸ਼ਿਸ਼ ਕਰਦੇ ਹੋ ਕਿ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਦੁਨੀਆ ਨੂੰ ਕੀ ਲੋੜ ਪਈ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਉਹ ਡਿਜੀਟਲ ਨੂੰ ਸਿੱਖੇ ਉਹਦੇ ਬਾਰੇ ਚ ਗੱਲ ਕਰੇ ਤੇ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਕੀ ਕਹੋਗੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ 2 ਮਿੰਟਾਂ ਚ
ਦੇਖੋ ਜੀ ਡਿਜੀਟਲ ਜੇ ਹੈਗਾ ਨਾ ਬਹੁਤ ਹੀ ਵੱਡਾ ਇੱਕ ਚੇਂਜ ਹੈਗਾ ਤੇ ਬਹੁਤ ਜਿੱਥੇ ਵੀ ਦੇਖੋ ਡਿਜੀਟਲ ਹੈਗਾ ਸਾਰੇ ਬੰਦੇ ਜੇ ਹੈਗੇ ਡਿਜੀਟਲ ਦੇ ਪਿੱਛੇ ਭੱਜ ਰਹੇ ਹੈ ਬਟ ਨਾ ਲੋਕਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਨਾ ਇਹਦੀ ਸਮਝ ਨਹੀਂ ਆਉਂਦੀ ਕਿਉਂਕਿ ਬੜਾ ਨਾ ਔਖਾ ਟੌਪਿਕ ਹੈਗਾ ਬਹੁਤ ਔਖਾ ਟੌਪਿਕ ਹੈਗਾ ਤੇ ਤਦੀ ਨਾ ਲੋਕਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਨਾ ਪੱਲੇ ਨਹੀਂ ਪੜ ਰਿਹਾ ਹੈ से तभी मैं एक किताब लिखी है विनिंग इन द डिजिटल एज ਇਹਨੂੰ ਥੋੜਾ ਸੌਖਾ ਕਰੀਏ ਇਹਨੂੰ ਥੋੜਾ ਜੋ ਬੜਾ ਨਾ ਇਹਨੂੰ ਥੋੜਾ ਸੌਖਾ ਕਰਕੇ ਇਹਨੂੰ ਸਮਝਾਈਏ ਤੇ ਤਦੀ ਦਾ ਕੁਝ ਹੋ ਪਾਊਗਾ I think that's where I will stop.
The funniest response, Nitin. And I think the punchline should be okay to soccer related to digital. What are your views on the platform-based business models and digital ecosystems? How are they disrupting the traditional models that you highlighted, wherein 70 to 80% of the revenue still comes from the traditional channels or the physical channels? And do you think that this platform and digital ecosystems are something that the organizations should be taking in very seriously? And by digital ecosystems, I mean to say, if I were to simplify, platform plus multi-industry strategic partnerships.
Yeah, so the word platform is used in different contexts, right? There is a I think what you're talking about are aggregation platforms. Yeah, aggregation platforms. Platform, you can also use in the context of cloud and AWS and Azure or Salesforce and so on and so forth, right? Now, as far as marketplace and aggregation platforms they are great economic models. They are great economic models. At the end of the day, business is about matching supply and demand. And with digital technology, it just becomes a lot more efficient and tenable. So absolutely, there is a great potential of the marketplace models. But what one needs to recognize is that these models work based on scale. Yeah. So whenever an entrepreneur is looking at this model, he or she believes that, I will create I will create the aggregator, I will create the marketplace model. But what you need to think through is that how you're going to build that critical scale. Because with marketplace models, what happens is that the outcomes are very binary. Yeah. So there is 1 out of 100 which will scale up and become the Uber and the Oyo and all of that, but there are 99 that will fail. Yeah. So that is just something which one needs to consider, that the these are very, very scale driven, and the outcomes are very, very binary.
Okay. Nitin, which brings me to the next question, that often these marketplaces or platforms come from, like, the space of the disruptor, as I like to call it. They are not backed by any incumbents. They just show up because the VCs identified the opportunities way before the big incumbents in the industry could. And as a result, they disrupt these big mega billion dollar successful incumbents or their business models. What are your thoughts on corporate venture capital and the in-house innovation engines that these big incumbents, who are still cash rich, who have not been completely disrupted, how should they go about, the internal innovation so that they do not miss these game changer opportunities?
Most large enterprises that I know of that I'm serving as as part of Incedo have now internal corporate venture arms. They have very active corporate development setups, which are constantly looking at M&A. Many of them, what they are doing is that consciously they are setting up different corporate structures and creating the disruptor.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So if I look at Verizon, which is one of the largest telcos here in the United States, they have set up something called Visible, which is like a disruptor, which is like a mobile-only telecom platform. Yeah. So
Yeah.
that's something which I which I see increasingly companies doing. That they have their internal corporate VC arms, and they are doing M&A, and they're also setting up new businesses to be challengers. But look, uh, there is almost like a law of physics operating here, and Clayton Christensen, who I just rate as one of the greatest thinkers, management thinkers we've had over the last 50 years, he wrote this seminal book, The Innovator's Dilemma. And it's almost by the nature of things that when disruptive technologies happen, they happen in a very embryonic fashion, and it takes quite a bit of time for them to develop. And at that
Yeah.
stage, for large enterprises, it's very difficult to spot them and to give them enough focus, because they do have like a cash flow business. Yeah. And therefore, by the time they wisen up to it, it's too late. Yeah.
Yeah.
So in some sense, Siddharth, it's kind of the nature of the game. Yeah. It's and again, if I take it, a parallel from spirituality and kind of Indic thought process, we have this whole thing about the creation, the creator, the preserver, and the destroyer. It's a cycle. So I think in any organization, it is it is there is that kind of set of forces which play out, and which is good because it gives opportunity for innovation, for entrepreneurship, and new players to emerge. So I see no harm in that, but for sure, the large enterprises, I think, are now quite aware of this whole thing, and they are doing a number of things, how they create these new models somewhat separately from the mothership.
Nitin, you spoke about your love for India. If you could talk about India's innovation and startup ecosystem, that we are living in a world where 70 to 80% of the unicorns and startups still come from US and China. Where do you think the Indian innovation engine is lacking, and what can be done to improve the startups, quality, or the innovation quality that is coming out of India? Any thoughts on how to reignite that engine?
Yeah. See, look, it's India's innovation potential is unbelievable. It's something which is humongous. But I think it is also undeniable that at this point we have not realized that potential, and I think we've gone through at least two generations of missed opportunities. Yeah, we went through the last 20-30 years of the rise of the IT industry in India, then India is clearly the global leader in the IT offshoring industry, and that should have been a great base for us to spur really world scale innovation. But
Yeah.
perhaps we just got caught in very cash flow generating successful business models, and there wasn't enough of a foresight or risk taking to invest behind long term innovation.
Mhm.
Then over the last 10 years we have had the whole e-commerce wave, and I think while there is a lot of value that has been created for a set of people, I think we lost the opportunity around innovation and really spurring the whole innovation ecosystem, because most of the business models were very me too and were very focused on valuation, kind of multiplying the valuation as opposed to truly
Yeah.
creating sustainable value. So
Mhm.
and I think somewhere greed took over, and how do you just keep on pumping up valuation higher and higher, and some of the fundamental investments took backseat. So I do think, and I have a strong view on this, that we are guilty of missing two great opportunities. And I think we have to ask ourselves that again, what are some of the root causes, and I think and I think it needs a national debate, that there is something about our national psyche, where we tend to be very short term, and kind of hesitate to really play out the long term bets. And it's very curious, for a civilization which is one of the oldest civilizations in the world, we have ended up in a very short term mindset, because for true innovation you need an investment mindset. And I think that's something which we need to do. In some ways, our opportunities and problems are well characterized by this whole jugaad innovation, that we are the
Yeah.
world champions in jugaad, but I think that's also a problem, because if you're always looking for quick fix band-aid solutions, you never scale. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think these are some of the fundamentals that need to be questioned. Now, having said all of this, yeah, the next generation of talent that is coming through, I think, is different. I think they are more self-confident. I think they have a different view on the world, and I think they're coming from a perspective of abundance and not scarcity. And I think that's a
Yeah.
very very important thing, because the generation so far came from a perspective of scarcity. They ended up being this very risk averse or short term. Yeah, but I
Yeah.
am very hopeful of the coming generation. There is a different mindset, and I think we will see over the next 10 years very different quality of startups coming from India. I think
Yeah.
where the level of innovation, the level of technology depth, I think will be very very different, and I think will be truly world class.
I think spirituality happens to be one of the topics that you deeply study, and you are, a good student, because I've had many interactions with you, and I think we have exchanged so many thoughts on that topic. How would you link that to mental health? And also, if you could talk about these important topics of mental health, for us in the times of COVID, wherein everybody is also stressed, people are short tempered, and also how the practices that you have been involved in, like Vipassana, Kriya Yoga, and even the practice of silence, which comes from Vipassana. Uh, how would you, integrate them, and if you could talk about them?
Yeah, see, this, we are in, this is the VUCA world, right? So there is a lot that is being thrown at us. This in this digital world, we have this data deluge. Yeah, we have data deluge. We have the social media. There's a lot that is attacking us, and
Yeah.
it can get very, you get seduced by it, you get drawn into it, but eventually it is very very energy sapping. At another level, this is, we are, there is, this whole abundance also means that there are so many opportunities to be chasing, and
Yeah.
you keep on, and you get onto this expectations treadmill that, okay, oh, this is the fruit I plucked. No, I want this bigger and sweeter fruit. And you keep on, pushing yourself, and it's a treadmill which keeps going faster and faster. And after a while, you get very exhausted. So there are these multiple forces playing out, the whole digital stimuli, the whole opportunities, expectations thing. And you can really, you can go crazy. That's where depression happens. That's where, you start really feeling defeated. So mental health is a very deep issue. It's a very, very deep issue for this digital age. And see, for me, the only real answer for this is, in a world which is so externally driven, it's outside in, how do you find the inside anchor? Yeah. Because you're constantly chasing the abundance and the opportunity outside, and which the digital age is so prolific in, but which can also, which is also the problem. The answer is to go inside yourself. And as you do that, you finding the silence within you. And as you find the silence within you, you get a taste of the abundance. You get the taste of the infinity. And once you do that, the need to find the abundance outside gets tempered. Yeah, because when you get in touch with that abundance, then you don't need to chase or seek. So this to me is the fundamental why I believe spirituality, and by spirituality I really mean practices which help you go inside yourself, are so critical to anchoring yourself in this VUCA world. Yeah. Now it could be many ways, but just the whole practice of yoga, and yoga is a lot more than just asanas and physical exercises, but the whole process of yoga, from the body to the breath, and then the mind, the practices of meditation, I think is so profound, and I think should become essential toolkit for every professional in this digital age. Already this is for many successful CEOs. You will find yoga and mindfulness as essential part of their toolkit. You will see that. Yeah, these topics have now become mainstream. Yeah. And now the interesting thing is that India is the land, which really over thousands of years, developed all of this thought process and gave it to the world. And I think the West, and certainly I see a lot of that in the US, the town I stay in, Short Hills, it's a small town, has got 4 yoga studios. Okay. So the West is certainly waking up to it at a tremendous pace, and I really I think that for everybody in India that recognize that, hey, this is what our real is the real unique contribution we have made to the world, and let us all of us benefit from this great wisdom.
Come to the end of my question. Before that, I want to say some words to you. I just want to acknowledge you for the great work you are doing, Nitin. I think one thing that has been consistent for you is your ability to broadcast the right words and to keep on inspiring people. I think one thing that has always been consistent for you is that your presence, ensures that people get great ideas. And the third thing is that when they bring those great ideas to you, you do listen. And I think that's what the rule of a leader is, that just identify those seeds and make sure that you give them the right amount of impetus and, little nudge that they are looking for. And when it comes from somebody that they really respect and value, I think that seed has the potential to grow into an oak tree. And you are very good at identifying those good seeds and oak trees. So I just want to thank you for being Nitin for writing this good book, for ensuring that your story just touches as many people, because you are not somebody who just keeps the ideas to himself. You broadcast it further. So from the core of my heart, I just pray for you. I pray for your book. So thank you, Nitin. And if there's any feedback you have for this, your entire podcast experience.
For Siddharth, for me, it is, I always enjoy conversations with you. You know that. And we've always had a very special bond. And that bond is there because, you are a seeker, you are an authentic seeker. And that's a very rare thing. And that's a very valuable thing. And, um, I I really admire that, that is a human quality. Because, if you are a seeker, then you will progress in the journey of life, in whichever way that journey of life pans out to you, pans out for you. So thank you for that. Thank you for being who you are. And I really enjoyed the conversation. And look, the conversation was also very clarifying for me, that it also helped me clarify, think through many of my own concepts. So that's great. And hopefully, look, the book, of course, now that I've written the book, I want the people to read the book, because that's the whole point of it. That for me, that there is some knowledge and experiences that I've been very fortunate to have, and my genuine intent is that people benefit from it. I think I have something helpful to say, and if people can benefit from it, that's something, which I think I would have made a good contribution in my journey of life. So yeah, so thank you so much for taking the word out. I will show the book. Here is the book.
Yeah, of
And
course.
it's a
And you
smart.
lift it up like you can see the author's name as well. All right, so that's Winning in Digital Age by Nitin Seth, and I highly, highly recommend it. And by the way, this is not just meant for the working professionals. This is meant for students. This is meant for people who are curious about the topic of digital, working professionals, business leaders. Everybody should get their hands onto it, and I highly recommend. And this conversation, this podcast, we will be releasing it, and I will be doing a couple of live streaming events with Nitin as well. So I think I'm excited about it, and I strongly recommend everybody, all the viewers of this podcast, to read it. Thank you, Nitin, for writing this gem.